Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. And we begin in Venezuela, where President Nicolás Maduro participated at the graduation ceremony for international community doctors. The 128th International Student of Medicine brings the total number of graduates from the program over the last 6 years to nearly 1,500. President Maduro said that he's committed to expanding the capacity to receive students from around the world, so that more people can study and become doctors in Venezuela.
Es el verdadero socialismo.
It's the true socialism, Bolivarian and Christian.
It's
the real humanist socialism. It's the real humanitarian aid. It's not humanitarian aid. It's solidarity as an expression of love between peoples. Donald Trump. This is the real aid to help people to graduate doctors, thousands and thousands from one year to the next, so that they can bestow health, so they can take health to the people of the world.
Mr. Imperator, Donald Trump.
And the Bolivarian armed forces rejected U.S. President Donald Trump called for them to turn their back on President Nicolás Maduro. The Minister of Defense, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, called Trump's speech arrogant and said they promoted terrorism. He said the armed forces only recognize one commander-in-chief, and that's President Nicolás Maduro. Padrino Lopez said it is outrageous that Trump thinks he can give orders to Venezuelan soldiers.
His statements make us realize his very dangerous attitude. He's someone who unfortunately guides a military power that with its imperialist policies have been planning an interventionist plan against our nation. For this reason, it is compulsory to insist that we are suffering a hybrid war to stifle the economy, imposing an economic and financial blockade that seeks to generate chaos and anarchy. We know that his real purpose is taking possession of our national wealth.
And the Venezuelan defense minister reiterated that the loyalty of the armed forces are with President Nicolás Maduro.
President Donald Trump ignores the Bolivarian, anti-imperialist and professional character of our institution that for several decades has been serving a democracy, constitution and the laws of the republic based on the elections and the popular vote that shows Nicolás Maduro as president for the period 2019-2025, to whom generals and all soldiers offer total obedience, subordination and loyalty.
And about Venezuela, but in Cuba, Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez held a press conference where he rejected the actions of the United States government against Venezuela.
The
government of the United States has fabricated an imperialist coup from Washington, with a president who was constructed in the northern capital, which hasn't functioned internally. You can cite numerous U.S. sources, accredited media outlets, which will provide all the details on the manner in which the coup is articulated. They are, even now, brutal. The pressure that the U.S. government has put against other countries, trying to force the recognition of a supposed self-proclaimed president who was named by Washington, or the call for new elections in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, annulling the ones which were legitimately and constitutionally held.
The Cuban minister also called on the international community to stand against the military intervention in Venezuela.
The government of Cuba calls on the international community to act to defend peace, to avoid completely, without exception, any military intervention against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
And the Venezuelan people are showing once again its rejection to the aggressions with the campaign Hands Off Venezuela. A group of citizens gathered at the Plaza Bolívar in Caracas to sign for peace in Venezuela. They are raising their voices against the U.S. interference attempts. The president of the National Constituent Assembly, Diosdado Cabello, joined them.
With these signatures, we are following our sacred duty to defend our homeland. And not only with the signature, but under any circumstances, we will be ready to defend our homeland. We have to organize our people. They have to know it, and they should keep it in mind.
Time for a first break here from the South. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and at Laura Pittelesur. Stay with us. And we are back, and we go to the Caribbean, specifically to Cuba, where the constitutional reform approved by the National Assembly have been debated for 3 months in communities and workshops. Here are the details, and this constitutional reform votation will take place this weekend, 24th of February. Let's find out more.
In this research center for livestock improvement, the island's constitutional reform is being debated.
Muy importante.
This is very important because we're making out the path we must go take. And in this particular case, we're looking forward to contributing to our country's development.
Scientists leave the laboratories for a few minutes to join the debate with their colleagues. Several topics are being discussed. One of them is same-sex marriage.
God created man and woman so they can procreate. And I think that was no mistake. That's why I think that it would be a big mistake to approve same-sex marriage. We won't be able to go back.
For others, same-sex marriage follows the humanist goal of the Cuban Revolution.
I don't think that we should do what the rest of the world does. This is about a constitution, and we are going to be able to hear what every citizen has to say, as each citizen will have the opportunity to vote for the constitution. We are defending a human right. It's not only from a historic or religious point of view, about giving citizens the opportunity to understand other citizens.
Participants of the referendum's first round agreed that the debate is a democratic expression of their country.
For us, being part of the constitutional reform debate alone is already important. The other important thing is to apply what our constitution says.
The first constitutional reform debate was done last August on Fidel Castro's 92nd birthday. For many, the Magna Carta that includes their political thinking is also a homage to the leader of the Cuban Revolution.
And now, to know more about the preparations for this referendum for the next weekend, we go to the island to contact Luis Autier, who brings us more details.
Yes, good afternoon. Indeed, the National Electoral Commission offered a press conference this morning to show some results of the dynamic test that took place last Sunday. As a result of this, now we know that we have over 24,000 polling colleges in Cuba, but also over 1,000 polling colleges abroad, so the Cuban who lives in other countries can go and vote that important day. But also there are over 400,000 people working in this referendum in the colleges, counting votes, everything. So it's a big number of people working for the referendum. But not everything are good news. According to the Commission, 2.52% of the colleges presented some kind of problems regarding to transportation, communications, personnel, so that's why all the provinces will have to give part to the Commission next Wednesday to say the problems they found, and a day after that they will have a teleconference explaining what they did to fix those problems. This is pretty much what we have now in that matter. We'll be back with more. Back to you.
And we continue in Cuba, where the emblematic Habanos signed a record year in sales in 2018. The cigar makers reached $537 million in sales last year, a 7% increase compared to 2017. And Spain continues to be the top market for Habanos, while China has surpassed France in the second position. And we continue in the Caribbean because calm is slowly returning to the streets of Haiti following a weekend of half of protests that left a number of dead people. Here are the latest with our special envoy Pablo Perez.
These schools' doors remain closed. There have been nearly 2 weeks of demonstrations. Thousands of Haitians taking to the streets to demand the ousting of President Jovenel Moïse. And while today saw no protests, the schools are still closed.
Kids are still at home. This is troublesome. I have 4 kids sitting at home doing nothing. I want them in school.
While the government has called for a return to normality, parents still feel the streets are not safe.
When you go out on the streets, you're taking a risk. You could be attacked or end up in the hospital. I'm saying this now because you asked me, but I don't know if speaking out is worth it anymore. In Haiti, nobody cares about what we have to say.
It's been the people who have been taking to the streets. 80% of the population lives in extreme poverty. There's a lot of distrust in the government, which continues to ask for calm.
This is an extremely tough situation. The government has shown no discipline when it comes to public spending.
While some banks and markets have started to operate again, the road to peace is still long.
Citizens must be the ones to help things return to normal, and it will be a slow process. The government lacks credibility, so anything they say has little meaning.
There is a lack of credibility because the government has failed to provide access to education to 50% of Haitian children. While the country is slowly recovering from the violence that took place these past few days, the causes that led to those protests remain unchanged.
Pablo Pérez García, Telesur, Haiti.
And we go back to Pablo Perez because he's our special envoy to Port-au-Prince, who has more details for us on the developing situation of the country.
Here in Port-au-Prince, normality seems to have returned to the streets, despite the fact schools remain closed. The big news today is the arrest of a number of individuals wearing tactical gear and carrying high-powered weapons. They initially claimed to work for the government, but President Moïse has denied these claims. These news have caused some commotion as the opposition believes this is an attempt to make the protesters appear to be armed and violent. Disregarding the fact, protesters are everyday citizens who are demanding the resignation of President Moïse due to numerous accusations of corruption.
And now we change topic because the cabinet chief of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been fired, suspected of improper campaign financing. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Brian Meir, has more for us.
On the night of February 18th, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro fired one of his closest confidants. Gustavo Bebiano was the minister of the General Secretariat of the Brazilian government, but he was also Bolsonaro's campaign manager last year and a close friend. Bebiano was forced down due to his involvement in a growing scandal that has uncovered the PSL party nominating fake candidates in last year's regional elections and using their candidacies to launder money. Whereas this is being cited as the most important reason for Bebiano's ouster, Monica Bergamo also reported in the Folha de São Paulo newspaper that while Bolsonaro was in the hospital, Bebiano had secret meetings with Generals Santa Cruz and Heleno and one of the directors of the powerful and antagonistic global television company. As the scandal continues to grow, it looks as if Jair Bolsonaro's tourism minister may be the next one to fall.
And now we keep moving on. Heavy rainfall in Bolivia have hampered the government's efforts to destroy tens of thousands of hectares of illegal coca crops.
The government embarked on an ambitious coca eradication program, but the bad weather has blocked it.
For example, in Yungas de La Paz, last year we eradicated between 15 to 20 hectares a day. Today we are only eradicating between 2 and 4 hectares. The rain has made it difficult. It's the same scenario in Cochabamba.
The government took the decision to remove coca crops with the consent of farmers who produce coca. The agreements were incentivized by development programs for the farming families.
All of these communities that will be affected with the eradication of illegal coca will be supported by the government with initiatives, such as agricultural production. This way, they have a legitimate income to maintain their families.
The agreement with the campesino unions reduced violence and conflict with coca producers.
In other countries, there's no participation from social movements. Rather, there's discrimination. The government applies its programs, and it's not going well. While in Bolivia, since President Evo Morales came, the fight against drug trafficking has been nationalized.
In the continent, Colombia is the largest producer of coca, with 208,000 hectares, followed by Peru and Bolivia. However, Bolivia allows the production of 22,000 hectares for traditional, medicinal, chewing, and indigenous rituals.
And now we go to Colombia, where organizations are filing complaints at the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights about the massive amount of forced disappearances in the country. According to the Red Cross, there were more than 83,000 cases of forced disappearances registered between 1958 and 2017. And social organizations say there are some 26,000 unidentified bodies in over 400 cemeteries across Colombia. And organizations also reported that the desert region of La Guajira is suffering from a humanitarian crisis. Over the last 8 years, over 4,700 indigenous Wayuu children have died of malnutrition. The region is heavily affected by climate change and droughts caused by hydroelectric dams. In Chile, wildfires have devastated tens of thousands of hectares of land in the country. Our correspondent in Santiago de Chile, Paola Dragnik, has the latest for us.
Over 4,000 wildfires have razed parts of southern and central Chile, with more than 50,000 hectares of land destroyed. President Sebastián Piñera made the announcement at a news conference. Piñera has come under fire for his planned trip to the Venezuelan-Colombian border on Friday to help deliver so-called humanitarian aid. Piñera is doing so at the invitation of Venezuelan opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó. Critics on social media have accused President Piñera of meddling in Venezuela's affairs while neglecting the fires raging in his own country. Meanwhile, in Chile, thousands of firefighters are still trying to bring the wildfires under control. However, these fire officers are also facing an uphill battle over what they describe as poor working conditions affecting their health and safety.
And now we make a second short break. Stay tuned with us. We'll be right back soon. And we begin now beyond Latin American frontiers and talking about sports, because South African double Olympic gold medalist Semenya went to the Court of Arbitration for Sport on Monday to challenge proposed rules that could force her to lower her testosterone levels. Castro supporters are rallying behind their golden girl in her fight, and Matuba Malaji look at the support she's received since from the beginning.
The support for South Africa's golden girl reached from her hometown of Limpopo up to the highest level of government when her gender was questioned.
They can write what they like. This is our little girl, and nothing is going to dampen her spirits and the spirits of South Africa.
We wish to register our displeasure at the manner in which Ms. Semenya has been treated.
Even after President Jacob Zuma's presidency, government positions haven't changed. The IAAF is still seen as the enemy of progress of an African child. Some commentators have even pulled the race card, saying if Caster wasn't black, she wouldn't be facing the humiliation she's been subjected to. This week, Caster Semenya released a list of experts she will call in her appeal hearing at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. She continues her fight against regulations aimed at lowering the testosterone levels of hyperandrogenic athletes like her. IAAF President Sebastian Coe tried to justify the process. He told reporters that the regulations are aimed at leveling the field between hyperandrogenic athletes and those with what he termed normal levels of testosterone. But one thing is certain, Caster Semenya is not going down without a fight. Matuba Malaji, Telesur, Pretoria.
Now we move to Egypt, where at least 2 policemen have been killed and 3 civilians wounded in a suicide attack in Cairo. According to Egyptian authorities, the perpetrator exploded a device when he was being persuaded by the police. The suicide bomber was heading to the heart of the Egyptian capital, Cairo.
People were telling us in the area that he was a stranger. 2 days ago, he was riding a bicycle and was wearing a mask and headphones. He didn't look like a terrorist. When the attack happened, Captain Mahmoud was dead, and the attacker was in pieces.
And at least 39 Palestinians have been injured by Israeli fire during a protest at the Gaza Strip. Israeli forces fired tear gas against protesters. The injured were transferred to nearby hospitals. At the same time, around 50 fishing boats joined a demonstration called Freedom Ship 24 in the Gaza port. And the United Nations have reported that hundreds of people are currently suffering from poverty and food insecurity in the Gaza Strip. According to United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, the Israeli blockade is the main cause of this situation. The blockade prevents citizens in the Strip to enjoy their basic rights, such as access to food, healthcare, and education. The blockade, that has lasted for 12 years, violates international law. And the former president of the Catalan government, Carles Puigdemont, has demanded support from the European Parliament to the Catalan people. Puigdemont made the request at an event in Belgium, planned to be celebrated at the European Parliament, but was cancelled due to security reasons. The Catalan former president lives in Belgium since 2017 after the attempt to declare independence in Catalonia. He's been prosecuted by the Spanish judiciary.
In Brussels, European Parliament cannot continue to be an institution far from the reality of our time. We demand that it stands as a genuine democratic assembly of representatives capable of finding political solutions when an attack on the dignity of millions of people happens, as in Catalonia.
And like this, we've come to the end of this reprieve, but you can visit our website, telesurenglish.net, where you can find more stories, more news, opinion articles, and special interviews, and many more information to complement your knowledge. Continue with Telesur, connecting the Global South. Until next time, thank you for watching.